Hello, my name's Fran Sands and welcome to myboxingcoach.com. Got a great video for you today. It's the first in a series of 3 connected lessons, each one building on the one before. Today I'm going to talk you through the concepts of great defensive boxing and great aggressive boxing. So there's 4 key aspects of being a good defensive boxer and my 5 key aspects of being a good aggressive boxer. Have a look at this and then I've got an important message for how we connect the two at the end of the video. An aggressive fighting style versus a defensive fighting style. People like to classify themselves. They like to put themselves in a neat box and say, this is what I do best and that's what I should do all the time. And it's interesting because I call it aggressive and defensive. Well, obviously the opposite of aggressive is passive. So passive is not something you really want to be if you're in a fight situation, or if you're even you're training to just keep yourself in good shape, because you'll just not deliver anything. You know, leave passive outside. So aggressive versus defensive, and we like to pigeonhole ourselves, put ourselves in boxes. Well, I don't. I think you should aim for versatility. So it shouldn't be, should I be an aggressive boxer or a defensive boxer? It should be, I can do both. So let's go through some points about what constitutes good defensive boxing and what constitutes good aggressive boxing or good aggressive fighting. So defensive, there are 4 points. Quickly, look, this is not running, right? Defensive boxing should not be confused with just running away. Running away doesn't really happen in a boxing ring. You get guys who dance around, and that's fine, that's great. We want to do some of that in our as we develop our defensive boxing. But we do a fighting retreat. We carry out a rear guard action. You've still got to deliver big power as you're backing away. So you can give ground, but you must exact a price. You don't give ground away for free, ever. Point number 1. Always be on the edge of range. So you think about our 5 ranges. You've got, if I'm well away from someone, I'm out of range. If their head is just a couple of inches beyond my outstretched arm, we are on the edge of range. If my arm lands on their chin, we are at long range. If their head is the length of my upper arm away from me, we are at mid-range. Any closer to that, then we are at close range. Defensive boxing is about being subtle. Always be on the edge of range. You've always got to provide some level of threat going the other way. Number 2, the trigger. So while you're on the edge of range, you've got to be slipping, feinting. You've got to be trying to trigger the reaction onto the opponent. As much of this, I like to use a phrase, boxing is a pressure business. If you're not punching, you should be feinting. If you're not feinting, you should be punching. So keep the pressure on, draw them forward, use lots of feints to trigger the opponent. And number 3, the jab. If you use no other punch as a defensive boxer, you must be able to use a good jab. Make it the best jab it can be, straight out and straight back. Okay, rotation and of the hips. Don't just put it out like that. Don't make it an arm shot. You've got to maximize the reach you can use on this one. Get a great jab. Work on the jab. And number 4 is the ability to pivot. Pivot off the lead foot. As an aggressive opponent comes towards you, if you're being defensive, you want to be able to half a step back and then pivot away, change direction. So there's 4 elements. Also, the pivot gives you great hitting opportunities. So you deliver the power away, bang, bang, bang. Okay, so there's 4 elements to focus on if we're doing defensive boxing. Aggressive boxing. So being aggressive is about being controlled, not wild. You've still got to remain really technically capable and proficient. It's about overwhelming the opponent. The risk goes up. The risk of you taking... I think boxing, in my mind, boxing is perfectly set up for the defensive boxer. I think it's yeah, I guess if you ever see a boxer in a street fight, it's very rarely that they'll go rushing forward towards someone in a street fight. They'll usually wait for people to come to them, because it's set up for that, I think. So the risk when you're being aggressive is that you're likely to take more shots, naturally. Okay, so it's a higher risk strategy. Point number 1, same, always be on the edge of range, be dynamic. So you can look almost passive, almost switched off to start with, but as long as you're on the edge of range, you don't have a lot of ground to cover. If you're starting an aggressive attack from too far away, your head's just going to get absolutely vaporized. So don't be too far away, even if you're on the punch bag. Stay on the edge of range so that you can do the little explosive movement in and try and deliver the shots that way. Number 2, proactive defense. So we want to be slipping as we attack. You want to minimize the risk of taking punches. So you can slip and punch off the slips, okay, as you're waving, pushing forward. Proactive defense. Keep your head moving as you're moving forward. Number 3, volume and intensity. You want to throw lots of shots in those little bursts of super aggression. Really let the shots go. Overwhelm the defenses of the opponent, of the defensive boxer. Really overload their senses with shots and feints and attacks, and just, you know, really reach that volume up nice and high. Number 4, rear foot pivot. So just as on defensive boxing, you want to do a front foot pivot so that you can change direction. With aggressive boxing, you want to make sure that your rear foot pivot works nice. Same principle as the front foot, but you're just doing it off the rear foot. You're holding the center of the ring, and your lateral movement. Okay, so that you can move, cut the ground off, keep the pressure on. So rear foot pivot and lateral movement, really key skills to develop as an aggressive fighter. And finally, be inventive at close range. Once you've got inside, you can be smashing away. Be inventive about what you do. So you could do bang, 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 stand switch, double up the hooks and uppercuts. Attack the center line, the flanks, the head and the body. But be inventive, don't just pound away. So defensive boxing is about conserving energy, managing the opponent, managing the ground in the ring. Aggressive boxing is highly demanding. It puts a lot of strain on you, both psychologically because you're taking more risks, and physically because it's much more draining. Okay, so that's the starting point. That's your concept. I believe strongly in concept, instill, execute. That's the concept. Have a think through that stuff. In a few days, I'll get you a follow-up video, and what that video does, it helps you instill the concepts by teaching you how to build some drills around it. It's a really great way to learn, really great way to bring your progression on. And it's great because it just helps you think. It develops your brain a bit and gives you more interest to your training sessions. In the meantime, why not download the Beginner Boxer Toolkit? It's my book, 64 pages, free to download. Drop an email address in there. Tons of stuff to help you develop your boxing skill set and your boxing training regime. Otherwise, my name's Franz Sands. This is myboxingcoach.com.